Hi, and welcome to Sociology2. We're going to look at the topic of aging. We're going to do this in two parts for this week and next week. Now, aging is a very important social category that defines what's appropriate or what's expected for people at various stages in their lives. Now, as a student, you may have likely experienced some prejudice or discrimination based on your age. Now, aging is a process that happens to all of us. Of course, you understand that. And understanding the social construction of aging can help us challenge the negative stereotypes associated with aging. An aging population has a profound impact on our society, as I'm sure you've probably heard. And you may be interested in learning more about the effect of aging population has on our ability to sustain current levels of social services, such as, and in particular, high levels of access to health care. Now, sometimes those people who are younger find it difficult to relate to issues pertaining to aging and older persons. Now, in our society, there is an emphasis on eternal youth and the beauty in our culture. Consider the advertisements that you may have seen or other forms of popular culture, and to contrast those images with the realities of aging. Look for examples in media and advertisement that reinforces the notion that functional age, and we'll look at that term later, works differently for women and men as they get older. Men, as they age, tend to be viewed more as distinguished or powerful, while women, they tend to be viewed more as old or grandmotherly. So many people may be uncomfortable with some of the discussions that occur as we get older, in particular death and dying. And placing it in the context of a wider social context may help make you more aware and more open to the dialogue about death and dying. So let's begin and look at age and aging trends, and we'll consider our views of age in the historical view. Social significance of age. Now, as pointed out in your text, how old are you is a question that enables us to categorize one another. Old today is not the same as old 50 years ago. You know, I'm 60 years old, and 50 years ago I can remember saying, seeing a 60-year-old and say, well, there's a geezer sitting on the porch and waiting all day. Now, I don't know that they looked and acted all that. I don't know, how that will occur. But today, 60 years old is not the same. We're more active. We can do and work more. We travel. We work longer. We socialize. We're not even considered old yet at age 60. And we'll get into that a little bit later when we look at categorization. Aging is the physical, psychological, social processes associated with growing older. And we can use two terms to look at age. One you're more familiar with, and that's chronological. This is the number of years old we are, and this is based on our birth date. The second term is what's known as functional age, or the observable attributes, one's appearance, mobility, strength, coordination, mental capacity to categorize people. And so those two terms, chronological and functional, is how we often relate, in particular older age, but not exclusively. There is a difference in greater, the differences that we do notice in terms of chronological and functional is oftentimes attributed to greater nutrition, medicine, more interests earlier in life with health and fitness that have helped widen the gap between chronological and functional age. As I mentioned in my intro, do we treat men and women, as we age in the same, or do we do it differently in society? And I'm sure if you look around you, you would see that we're not always the same. So let's look at some of the aging trends. Now, in Canada, the proportion of people aged 65 and older is increasing, while the proportion of younger people is decreasing. Referred to by some analysis as the graying of Canada or the silver tsunami, the aging of Canadian population results in an increase in the life expectancy combined with a decrease in birth rates. Now, if you look on page 155 in figure 14.1, you'll see where the number of 65-year-olds is growing as a population, And in the 4.2 graph, growing life expectancy for both men and women. Now also, particularly what's useful in terms of statistics is if you check out the figure 14.3 on page 156, you'll see the age pyramid. And this is a lot of times how they depict aging and the population of countries to sort of see where the distributions are. And you notice that wide band where the boomers are. It's turned what is typically a healthy pyramid, if you will, age pyramid. That's healthy, lots of young people, not so many old people, and it's starting to revert this into what's known as a muffin, where you're going to start to see a bulbous top of older people, but a smaller group of people beneath, younger people. Now, age is socially significant because it defines what's appropriate or expected for people at certain stages. It's also a profound effect on individuals' perception of others, since capabilities, responsibilities, and entitlements are often assigned to narrowly defined categories such as infancy, young adult, middle adulthood, later adult. So age is one of the few ascribed statuses that changes over time and gets reinvented as societies, themselves will change. I mean, society, like I mentioned, when I was younger, 10 years old, looking at 60 years old, the 60-year-olds from then are different. Today, they're much more active, so that sort of status of age 50 years ago has changed to what it is and what it looks like today. So age as a historical perspective. Now, we haven't always viewed these categorizations of age in the same way. People are assigned to different roles and positions based on each society's age and role structures. In pre-industrial societies, these would be the agrarian-based societies, they were this is going back hundreds of years. Now, we do certainly see, in fact, thousands of years, we still see some cultures that adhere to this. But the agrarian perspectives of people of all ages, childhood was a very brief transition period, were expected to help with the work. With very little training was necessary to fill the roles that were present at that time. Now, in the industrial societies, skills necessary for the roles are more complex, and the number of unskilled positions is more limited. So consequently, older people are expected to retire so that younger people who are expected to attend school and acquire skills that they'll need to take over those positions. Now, I mentioned in some of these categories, infancy, early childhood, early adulthood. We're going to chat just a bit on late adulthood. Now, sociologists and social gerontologists have developed a number of explanations of social effect of aging. Now, first is how are we categorizing late adulthood? And I mentioned earlier that my being 60 isn't even considered old by a sociological perspective. It's because today we define three categories of late adulthood. The first category is the young old. And this is people who are chronologically between 65 and 74. The second group is the old. These are people chronologically between 75 and 85. And then the third group is the oldest old, and these people are 85 and older. So at 60, I'm not even categorized as old yet. Now, older people are healthier than they were in the past. However, with larger numbers of older people, you're also going to have larger numbers of older people who do experience health issues. Health issues like Alzheimer's and loss of strength and flexibility and stamina. However, many of these issues can be improved. Now, other health issues older people are adjusting to changing roles, things like retirement. Now, retirement and being a grandparent are two things that as you get older are often parts of your changing roles. Now, all in all, older people are happier, healthier, and more content with their lives. They have more financial security and more freedoms, and they're able to volunteer and enjoy their older lives better than they have been in the past. Now, I've mentioned about retirement. Now, retirement is the sort of an end of status, if you will. If you look at one of the primary ways we define who we are, it's through the career or the jobs that we do. And so retirement is the end of a status, an end of a defined period of need. We're needed, we're paid for what we can do. So that end of one's career, it affects one's income, it affects your personal identity. Certainly back 50 years ago and older, when men who were the predominant wage earners retired, their sense of who they were diminished. And oftentimes the reasons why older people died a lot younger was they had no purpose. They had no reason for being. Their reason for being was to work, to raise a family, to provide for the family, and then that didn't happen. So retirement is not something that has been around forever. It's a relatively new experience, and in Canada, the Old Age Act was introduced in 1927. It provided a basic income to needy retired people. Now today, it's the Old Age Security Pension, and that starts up when people are age 65. Also, many older people have been paying into work-related pensions and RSP investments, making retirement more manageable. Now, if you check on in your text there, figure 14.4 and figure 14.5, you get some additional data around this issue of retirement. Now, with people living longer, with more security, the need to be needed and occupied, therefore easing the transition into retirement, more older people need to find things to do, and they are. They're volunteering, they're exploring hobbies, they're even continuing to work longer if it's possible. Old age is not what it used to be, and for many older people. However, we can consider that there are inequities related to aging, and so let's pursue that a little bit. Age differentiation in Canada has contributed to both age stratification and the inequities and differences, segregation, or conflicts between age groups, and a term that's also known as ageism. Ageism, the prejudice and discrimination against people based solely on their age, is reinforced by stereotypes. Although we're looking at older people, ageism is not limited to that age group. As mentioned, any age group where prejudice and discrimination is based on that age or age group is ageism. So the limitations of what young people can do based on an age limit could be, in some terms, ageism. When we consider media is a very big contributor to depicting negative images, or at least images, but negative seems to be the one that gets sustained, of older people. It includes the perceived differences as to how older men and older women are viewed in advertisements, in movies, in print media. For example, men can get gray and be distinguished when women should dye their hair and treat their hair to appear younger. In spite of the negative images, and with there being a bigger and healthier older population, this image is starting to change in media. Since this population has money and represents a large number, they wield more influence, where they shop, what they buy, how much of what they buy, what they invest in. So if you review the research that's referenced on page 163 to 64, it'll clarify this issue around social expectations. Now, we must bear in mind that there are many other people who could not save or have a pension along with maybe a disability that they have or illness, and they're not as fortunate or experienced enough to have a different life than other older people. And so the issues of wealth, poverty, and aging become paramount. Now, this is reinforced in your text with the question, the two questions. One, has the economic situation improved for older Canadians? Well, the simple answer is yes, absolutely. And two, are older Canadians able to maintain a satisfactory standard of living? Well, This is more complex, and if I'm going to refer you back to your text for a more complete answer on this on page 164-66. Now there's two concepts, the two concepts that were referenced earlier, age stratification and ageism, in turn by devaluing age in combination with societal emphasis on youth contribute to the rising tide of elder abuse. Now this can include physical abuse, psychological abuse, financial exploitation, medical abuse, or neglect. Passive neglect is the most common form of abuse. Ageism is prejudice and discrimination against people based on age, and it's particularly focused on an older person. All right, now this has been a fairly brief overview of aging. I'll do part 2 next week. So I hope this has been helpful. Please do go out and look in the mall or check out into your social media and look and see just how we see aging and how we depict it. What is it like in media, in advertisement, in the way that we see things in movies about older people and younger people, and how ageism is more rampant perhaps than maybe you at first thought. All right, so carry on the good fight, and we'll see you next week. Bye now.